We reported 1 year ago today, right here on this program and on Hannity, Sarah Carter first reported that FISA and John Solomon was acquired to wiretap Trump. We broke that story on radio and on television. And by the way, 8 days later, you had the media ripping Trump because he put out, I'm being wiretapped, and perhaps not the right language, but factually he was right and others were wrong. And then you go and you pay very close attention. And what do we have? James Clapper denying that there was a FISA court order for wiretapping when I'm pretty certain he knew pretty darn well there was. And then, of course, James Comey, he's not going to comment on the FISA process. No evidence, of course, that Obama or anybody wiretapped Trump before the election. And Susan Rice almost trying to justify it. Now, as we look at this timeline, certain things have emerged. Joining us to sort through it all is Jay Sekulow. He is the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, also counsel to the president. Jim Comey is about to go on a big book tour.
Right.
Jim Comey knew about the FISA warrant in October of 2016. He knew that it was presented to the court with glaring omissions. They never told the FISA court judge in their application that Hillary Clinton bought and paid for it, nor did he follow FISA law nor FBI protocols in verifying and corroborating that the information, in fact, being presented to the court was true. And then in January, he told the president-elect, January 2017, that, there's this dossier, but it's unverified and it's salacious. So he was either lying in January or lying in October. Which is it?
Well, here was the nature of his false statements. I like to put it in the legal term. Lying is fine, but false statements. So you have a situation where they had already obtained a FISA warrant based on that dossier. And then on January 6th, he tells the president-elect of the United States, hey, by the way, we have this dossier, but it's salacious and unverified, so we're not doing anything with it. Meanwhile, he knows that he obtained a FISA warrant on it. Then, it was the day before the inauguration, they obtained a renewal on that FISA warrant with the same evidence. So they utilized that dossier on multiple fronts while they were telling the president it was salacious and unverified. And then you heard from James Clapper. You hear from all these experts who I would have known and I knew nothing about it. None of that is true. It was ongoing. It had been issued multiple times, and it was based on the dossier.
Well, let's use the legal term. If you make
that's been proven by the Adam Schiff memo.
Let's go back for just a second here. If you're making an application for a FISA warrant, there are certain stringent rules, part of the law that must be followed. Isn't part of that the information you're presenting to the judge, that it's got to be verified and corroborated, which never happened with the Steele dossier? Isn't that also part of FBI protocol? And secondly, if you omit purposely, because they all knew that it was bought and paid for by Hillary by October 2016, if you purposely withhold information that would impact the judge's decision, isn't that making a false statement by omission?
Well, sure, but here's what they did. I mean, even take it a step back. They, and Andrew McCabe testified to this, that absent the dossier, they would not have even sought to obtain the FISA warrant. So they wouldn't have even gone to court to obtain the FISA warrant, but for the dossier. Then Adam Schiff says in his oral statements on some other networks how that was fundamentally not true and incorrect, and he's going to address that in his memo. He comes out with his memo, and what's avoided? Any discussion about Andrew McCabe and that testimony. Why? Because he wasn't going to make a knowing false statement, and it was clear that what McCabe said, based on the information that was shared with the House Permanent Intelligence Committee, Select Intelligence Committee, that in fact that it was based on they wouldn't have even sought the application without the dossier.
Well, that's Andrew McCabe's statement, and that was not contradicted in the Schiff memo. And McCabe was saying we wouldn't have even applied had it not been for the dossier. But again, it's unverified.
Would not have even sought. Would not have sought. Yeah. Together or gone to court under those circumstances.
Let me throw a hypothetical out at you. Jim Comey's going out on his big book tour.
Yep.
If you were his attorney, knowing what we now know about all of this, knowing that he was writing an exoneration of Hillary long before he had even interviewed her or 17 other key people in the Clinton email server.
He granted immunity to. He didn't even interview witnesses he granted immunity to.
My question is, if you're his lawyer, would you advise him to go out in public and talk about these issues? Do you see legal jeopardy for him?
Well, I think he's got to be, yes. First of all, discussions he had with the President of the United States are privileged. It's called executive privilege. And that's why when he leaked that information in those memos that to his friend of his to get, remember to obtain the special counsel, that was his testimony, that was in a clear violation not only of the Department of Justice protocols, which, can you imagine if an FBI agent leaked a 302 interview form?
Wow.
An interview witness and a key witness, so they'd be fired, I guess, although with the Department of FBI, who knows what would actually happen.
What about the rumors that some of those 302s were changed? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, right. But in writing a book, the book better not have any discussion of confidential communications he had with the President of the United States or other executive members of the administration, because those would all be protected under a privilege, unless the President or the White House were to waive those.
But knowing what we know now, that they never followed the FISA law to verify and corroborate, isn't that another issue of legal jeopardy?
Well, I mean, first of all, could you imagine if you're the FISA court judge, how you feel about that?
Where are these? There are four separate judges. Why haven't we heard from them? Because one of the judges responded.
Go ahead.
One of the judges actually said that the executive branch could compel them, if they wanted, to release the FISA applications.
Correct. So these judges generally aren't public about this because this is a FISA proceeding. This is not a court proceeding where you have a government lawyer and a private lawyer representing the interests of the party that's about to be or has been under surveillance. That's not the way FISA works. It's a one-sided system. It's a chamber, in a sense, that you go in, and it's a government, it's a secret court. We set it up because of intelligence concerns. But then taking it to the next logical step is they drop in a footnote that this may have been a political research from another party, but they don't identify what it is.
Well, no, it may have a political component to it. But they knew that it was Hillary's bought and paid for.
I think that was intentionally misleading the court. And the individual lawyers and FBI agents that signed those affidavits and the lawyers that presented that should be held accountable ethically.
Well, I would be honest. I would be afraid to be in that legal jeopardy if I had purposely misled a judge. Why do I think that a contempt order would be slapped on me and I'd be sent to the nearest jail and be calling you and begging for a cake with a file?
Well, that's because what you would have done would have been a violation of the law. And clearly here, in my view, based on the evidence that we know, that's what happened here. And like I said, I haven't talked to these FISA judges. I don't know. But I can't imagine that they're taking this in a positive way. I think
why wouldn't the president, though, release it if he has the authority to?
Well, there's a lot of look. I'm speaking here as the president's private counsel, so I'm not part of the Department of Justice. I'm the president's private lawyer, so I'm counsel the president in a private capacity. So I don't speak for what the agency or what the White House can or cannot do.
Let me pull you off this.
There may be reasons they don't because of intelligence sources and methods. I don't know. That's outside of my jurisdiction.
All right. So Jeff Sessions, these are what my sources, and I think he pretty much confirmed this last night in an interview with Shannon Bream. Everybody, Bob Goodlatte, Trey Gowdy, Devin Nunes, all these people, I think rightly have been calling for a second special counsel.
Including Sean Hannity and Jay Sekulow. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Months ago. Right.
And so what I'm told by the Justice Department is, no, we're working through the process. The process is the IG report comes out. Well, an IG has no prosecutorial standing. And then the Justice Department lawyers would look at what the findings are. And then they would maybe then consider a special counsel. The only problem is we know laws were broken already. Yeah.
Well, that's not what's actually happened, though. So what the Attorney General said to Shannon Bream, and a lot of this is not getting reported because of the way the edits of the video were done just for TV purposes. But he said that I have great respect for Mr. Gowdy and Chairman Goodlatte, and we're going to consider seriously the recommendations. He then said, I'm also aware that we have a responsibility to ensure the integrity of the FISA process, and we're not afraid to look at it. But the sentence before that reads, I have appointed a person outside of Washington, many years in the Justice Department, to look at all the allegations that the House Judiciary Committee members sent to us, and we're conducting that investigation. That's not an independent that's not a inspector general. So that's a lawyer that is either within the Department of Justice or someone that the Attorney General has designated to look at this to determine probably the
What does that sound like to you? You've been around Washington a long time. How do you interpret that?
It sounds like to me it's the preliminary to the appointment of a special counsel.
Okay, we'll take a break. We'll come back. He is the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, also counsel to the president. Jay Sekulow is with us. As we continue, Jay Sekulow, he is the chief counsel, American Center for Law and Justice, and also counsel to the president. I want to go back to what the attorney general said last night, because a lot of conservatives I know are frustrated. They're frustrated that the attorney general recused himself immediately after he was appointed to be the attorney general, which resulted in Rod Rosenstein making the decision for a special counsel. You know, we've heard Russia, Trump, Russia for an entire year, but nobody has, quote, there's smoke, but there's no evidence. And now the special counsel we are reading that now they're looking into the UAE, and their indictments have nothing to do with Trump, Russia. Even Adam Schiff said there's no evidence of any Trump-Russia collusion. But yet it goes on, and it literally dominates headlines on every news channel, every newspaper, every day.
Don't believe everything you read. So what happens in these is there is an echo chamber inside of Washington, D.C. I've been a lawyer and practicing in Washington going on 4 decades. So there's an echo chamber inside of Washington, and stories tend to create themselves, and they're self-verified. So a lot of what you read is just not true. And I'm not going to get into details, obviously, of any conversations that I have or have not had with the Office of Special Counsel. But I'm not concerned about allegations I read in the newspapers.
What about the issues that I've been following so closely? And that is that, what has happened with the dossier? Who bought and paid for it? How a FISA warrant was obtained? How is it possible that an investigation is rigged and you write exonerations before you do the investigation? When I read about, Uranium One, and we had an undercover operator inside of Putin's network that's committing crimes, and then we still allowed 20% of America's uranium to go to them. My audience is listening to this. There's nothing that anybody has ever corrected me on in terms of the facts, but nothing happens. Why?
Because we have not yet had appointed a special counsel, nor have we had a release of the Inspector General's reports on this. So you and I have been talking about this for a long time, back last year, when we said there was a need for a special counsel, we said we wanted several areas scope of inquiry. What were those? It was there was Goodlatte and Graham and Grassley were talking about a special counsel to look at the Clinton Foundation matter. Then there was discussion of including Uranium One. Then the FISA stuff broke in the fall, remember. More of the FISA information came out in the fall. And then we said, now the special counsel, separate, this is independent from what Bob Mueller is doing. It's outside of Bob Mueller's.
And you're confident this is all going to get done?
Yeah, I don't have any personal knowledge that Jeff Sessions tomorrow morning is going to make an announcement of a special counsel. But I will tell you this, the preliminaries are being laid out for the American people, and he said it yesterday. And I think that this is going to, I think the request for this is coming from citizens, is coming from their elected representatives, and I think the executive branch needs to respond appropriately, and that would be the appointment of a special counsel for this.
All right. Thanks, Jay Sekulow. We'll see you also tonight on Hannity, 9 Eastern, Fox News Channel.